So I would like to welcome everybody to today's Polonium Foundation Career Café. My name is Karolina Tkaczuk, and I have an honor to lead today's discussion with really fabulous three guests, and I hope we'll learn more about them and their extraordinary careers throughout this session. And today's topic is knowledge transfer and technology transfer, and looking at it from the perspective of scientists, if it's really for me or maybe not, and maybe should I choose something different. So I would like to ask, first of all, Dr. Ewa Nowicka-Ratajczak, who is a coordinator of Career Café, to say a few words about Polonium Foundation and the project Career Café. Asia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Karolina. Let me just share the screen. I hope you can see it. Always there are some technical difficulties, so please just confirm that you can see the full screen.
It's good.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So welcome everyone. It's my privilege to be coordinator of this project, Career Café, organized by Polonium Network, which is a platform from Polonium Foundation. So the main goal of our Polonium Foundation is to unlocking the potential of the Polish scientific diaspora. The foundation has started in 2016. It was established through the need of Polish PhD students conducting their research abroad. So through this need, students decided that they need a platform to meet and to exchange their scientific both achievements and expectations. So Polonium Foundation is organizing many meetups and conferences. And as you can see on this timeline, this is how we are growing. So the first conference was organized in 2012, and it got around 100 participants. And last year, number of participants significantly increased. So we would like to invite you to be part of our growth. Hence, in 2020, Polonium Foundation decided to build up a network, which is called Polonium Network. So we gather more than 500 scientists overseas and in Poland, as well as entrepreneurs. So we are spread around the world, as the map shows. And what we have done so far, that we organized many meetups across Europe and in the US, as well as we are partners in the meetings, and our Polonium Foundation also has a newsletter from which you can learn a lot about our achievements and our meetings which we organize. So we strongly encourage you to subscribe to our platform, which the link will be in the chat. So majority of our members are academic and industry professionals, followed by PhD students and undergraduate students. The disciplines which we represent are life scientists, followed by social scientists, IT and engineering, as well as mathematics and physics. So as you can see that we gather people across disciplines, and this is our power, because we would like to gather Polish scientists from around the world who do research in different areas, because only this way we can all grow together. Also, as I mentioned, we are from different institutions, and these are just few of those. From those institutions, people are in our Polonium network, as well as from those institutions, people are participating in our events. And also heads up, because this year also Polonium Foundation will be organizing a great conference, which will be organized in fall, so please tune in. Also, we got trust of many institutions and many partners who support us during our growth. And also what I would like to emphasize that also Polonium Network is the platform where you can look for opportunities. So at the moment on our network, there are more than 35 active job offers. So if you sign to our platform, you will also have the access to it. So that's the great place not only to meet your peers, but also to look for opportunities how to develop your career. And our current project, Polonium Network Career Café, was launched in last year, 2021, in November. And we decided to organize a series of free events which can gather members of Polonium Network as well of people who are interested in science. And every month we organize such webinars and workshops where we can discuss and exchange our points of view. So I would like to welcome our panelists and our hosts. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. And also I would like to thank our partner, Polonium Foundation, for co-organizing this event with us. With this, I would like to thank the organizers from the Polonium Foundation. These are the people who did the work and made this event happen. Thank you so much for your time. I would like to invite all of you for our next workshop, which will happen next month in May, and it will be about coming abroad, the open research and reproducibility revolution, held by Marta Tapor. Thank you so much, and in the chat you will find links, both registration link for the upcoming event as well as to sign to the Polonium Network. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Asia, for this very brief presentation of Polonium Foundation and Polonium Network. And as Asia already mentioned, this special edition is co-organized with Polonium Foundation. And here I would like to ask Dr. Ewa Nowicka-Ratajczak to present Polonium Foundation in a shell.
Thank you so much, Karolina. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks a lot to Asia for enabling us to co-host this event, and thanks a lot to the guests and everyone who's participating. I'll just share my screen as well to show you a presentation of Plugin, the foundation that I'm representing today. Could you just confirm that actually you can see the presentation, please?
Almost there. We see the white screen right now.
White screen is not what we want to see, so I'm just going to share again then. How is it looking now?
It's coming up, yes.
Okay, perfect, gradually. Okay, so as said, I have an honor of representing the Plugin Foundation today. And it's an international network of Poles that mainly live abroad and work in the innovation and technology sector. Our goal is to connect those individuals and connect the hubs such as London, Paris, San Francisco, Singapore, and other cities in Europe and overseas as well. Our values are open-minded patriotism. We want to make an impact together through innovation and technology. We want to engage in collaborative initiatives, and we want to have fun. So our foundation is structured in three what we call streams. The first one that I have an honor to be head of is called Inspire stream, and it's all about the success stories. So within that stream, we've got the ambassadors of Polish Innovation Awards, and two of the speakers, they've been either the nominees of the winners of this award, and we are very proud to be carrying on with that project in this year as well. And we've got the Plugin podcast as well, which are monthly interviews. Then we've got the knowledge sharing, which is about the tech and innovation ecosystem. We've got the Pitch to London competition, as well as monthly webinars that we call B-Stocks. And the last one is about connecting people, about developing the network of like-minded individuals. And here we can mention our annual event, flagship event, which is Polish Tech Day this year, which is going to take place in June, as well as creating and managing the local chapters of Plugin Foundation in the innovation and technology hubs. So the first stream inspire about the success stories about promoting a positive image of Poland and Polish technology. So mainly we focus on internationally recognized professionals, business owners, as well as scientists or C-level management. As mentioned, we've got 2 projects within that category. One of them is the Ambassadors of Polish Innovation. And here we've got Agata, who's won the award last year. And also we had another category of the Rising Star that was won by Zofia Kierner, who's a very young activist. Then the next chapter, the next sector of Polonium Foundation is the Share Knowledge. Here we are sharing stories, lessons, good practices about emerging technologies and innovation. We've got our monthly newsletter, as well as the B-Stock, so the monthly networking events and the webinars, as well as the Pitch to London startup pitching contest. So this is the jury of last year. The contest takes place during our annual event of Polish Tech Day. And here are the B-Stocks. So far we've had 8 episodes and 20 speakers. And the last chapter of Polonium Foundation is the Connect stream. So here it's about creating the global network of relationships and support. Our projects are the mentioned Polish Tech Day, as well as maintenance and creation of the plugin chapters. So those are the local organizations, and through that we want to enhance the networking within the internationally recognized and Poles that's emigrated and are working abroad. Here is some short view of our event Polish Tech Day that I've mentioned a few times already. So last year it was our biggest event in the history, and we made it a whole day conference that was followed afterwards by a London networking event in partnership with the Polish City Club. We've had over 500 registration, 40 speakers, 12 panels that you can watch on our YouTube channel still. And also there was the Polish Ambassadors of Polish Innovation Gala that was streamed, that announced the 3 winners plus the Rising Star winner, Zosia. So just before inviting you to join us, I also wanted to show you a very human aspect of our organization and really the importance of having fun and spending time with like-minded people. So we do local periodic gatherings, networkings, afterworks, and here is a look at some of us. On the website, you can click and go to join us if you shall you wish to associate with us, and we'd be more than happy to include you in one of the projects that I've had a chance to talk to you about. So thanks a lot. We are again very happy to be here and privileged to co-organize this event with Polonium Foundation. We hope you enjoy the discussion, and I'm certain myself being a past PhD student now, a PhD title holder. I'm not sure how to refer to myself anymore, but I do believe in the value of this conversation, and I look forward to hearing the views of our participants. And again, thanks a lot for your participation.
Thank you very much, Iga, for this brief presentation of plugin as well. And I encourage everybody to take a look at both of these resources presented just a second ago, and maybe you'll make some good use of it. Before we start, I would like to also encourage everybody to ask questions. I'll start first, but you're welcome to join and post your questions on the chat. In the chat, and I will try to ask those questions to our panelists. So I'll start with introductions. And first is Agata Zborowska, who's a COO of Conception X, the company that helps PhD students launch their deep tech startups based on their research. And they also make it possible to connect PhD students with the industry and equip them with appropriate knowledge and tools to actually become an entrepreneur. She says about herself that she created a startup and failed. And I hope she's going to tell us a little more about that, because this is a very interesting story, I presume. She also has a long list of successes on international arena, starting from Poland through UK, Spain, and Portugal. And I hope she'll tell us way more about her experiences. Welcome, Agata.
Thanks, Carolina. Great to be here.
Another speaker is Dr. Ewa Nowicka. She's a technology transfer officer that helps academics commercialize their outputs, the results of their research. Her background is strictly scientific, which is very interesting. I can say that as an ex-scientist as well. And she has a very vast experience on international arena as well, both Poland and Great Britain, and then Berlin in Germany. So she started off in Poland, but then continued in the UK, and then visited Technical University of Berlin for a while. She's an accomplished scientist who published more than 40 papers, but for some reason decided to become a technology transfer officer. And I hope she will tell us why. Welcome, Ewa.
Thanks, Carolina. I'm really looking forward to today's discussions.
And last but not least, Stanisław Jastrzębski, who's a CTO of the Molecule One company. It's a startup working in drug discovery space that aims at making organic chemistry more predictable. And Stanisław, as all of us, has also very vast experience on international arena. He got his PhD degree from Jagiellonian University in collaboration with Edinburgh University, and then did his postdoc at NYU. And he's very passionate about improving fundamentals aspects of deep learning. Welcome, Stanisław.
Welcome.
So reading all your bios, I realized that none of your careers is very obvious and very straightforward, like mine. I became a business person after getting a PhD and doing my postdoc position. So when you were a young person, I'm not saying that you're not now, but when you were younger at the university times, did you think about being a hardcore scientist, or you had some other plans, or maybe you wanted to be someone else in the future? How did it look like in your case? Maybe I'll start with Ewa.
Well, I must say, I've always wanted to be a teacher. And when I entered university, I realized that I want to become a lecturer. And that's why I pursued my scientific career. I really wanted to get a lecturership position. But what I really liked in academia was teaching, supervision of students, marking. And what I didn't like was doing research, writing scientific papers and grant applications. And at some point I just had to decide, okay, this is not for me. So I was looking around trying to find lecturership positions that were teaching based, and unfortunately in the UK these are quite rare. And that's why I've decided, well, that's not really what I want to do at this stage. I wanted to explore another opportunities, but I really believe that one day I will get back to university and I will start lecturing, but I believe maybe more on innovation and technology transfer now.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. And how is it in your case, Stanisław? Was it the same story, or you were eager to escape academia, or it was something different?
Well, I ended up being a scientist both as an accident, and also I think I had to. So my parents are scientists, and I started programming as a quite little kid, but then I wanted to become everything else but a scientist. And the way I ended up being a scientist is that I lost a bet with myself. So I wanted to I made a bet with myself on, how I will, I think it was, perform in the physics national competition, that one after high school. And it was kind of, if I won, I would go into I would go and study medicine. Then if I just, end up performing well, but not exactly the way I wanted, then physicist. And if I completely screw up, I will go into computer science. So I completely screwed up. I ended up going to study computer science. And the way I became a scientist, in fact, is that I had the opportunity to learn from quite, I would say, pioneers in artificial intelligence and deep learning while in my internships during my studies, and I really fell in love with this particular domain of deep learning that I am working in. So it was quite accidental, in fact.
So it was accident that ended up with the success.
Sorry, could you repeat?
I was saying that was an accident that ended up with the success, because you're being happy with what you do and falling in love with what you do is definitely a success.
Well, yeah, in this, I wouldn't call myself necessarily a successful person, but I really like what I'm doing. So in this sense, yes.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of my own story, because I got my master's in biotechnology and then PhD in bioinformatics, postdoc in crystallography and drug design. But I would never think I would be a scientist when I was a younger self. That was a pure accident, and I really don't know how did it happen, to be perfectly honest. And Agata, how was it in your case? Did you want to be whoever you are right now, or you were thinking of something completely different?
No, I think I have a very unconventional career story. I studied geography. I was really always passionate about geography and staring at rocks and sand and forests, which is not probably a very common thing. But I ended up studying geography, and then I went through travel industry, program management, and I ended up in the startup world and entrepreneurship. Funnily enough, I never wanted to teach, exactly opposite to Eva. And I on purpose didn't even take that additional subject at uni. And where I am now at the moment, working on the program, is what we exactly do is help people learn to become founders, and that's through a variety of different ways, including training. So I'm also teaching some of it on our course. The full circle, not wanting to do something and ending up doing exactly that.
So I'll follow up on that a little bit, and I'll start with you again. So you all spent a lot of time abroad, and was it a big change in your life? Because you said that you started doing things that you were never thinking of doing before. And did it push you to change the way you see things?
Yes, absolutely. I think the moment you move abroad, everything is new. The people around you, buildings around you, the air smells differently. The world works differently. Coffee tastes differently. Everything is different. So you have to adapt. But I think that's the beauty of it, because, the more you're exposed to different environments, ecosystems, people's networks, the more you experience. And I suppose you collect those experiences over the years, which prepare you in some way to become a startup founder at some point. I think that's a really important thing there, because when you move abroad, as everyone knows here, or most people do, you have to adapt. And I think as a startup founder, whether you're commercializing science or not, you have to adapt often, and you have to look for solutions and solve problems which are not always you're not even aware where to start with, but you somehow manage to solve it, and then you end up living in one country or another, working on some interesting projects. So yeah, that's my version of the story, but I'm sure others have more to share in that regard.
Stanisław, what pushed you to go abroad, and what was the impact of that decision?
Well, again, kind of an accident. So a friend of a friend was visiting Krakow and then ended up, through a chain of people recommending me for an internship in University of Edinburgh. So there was an accident. I mean, I had some experience abroad, but it was more in, let's say, industry and not really science related. So that was quite accidental, but it was very influential. So, so I'm working in this subfield of artificial intelligence called deep learning. And back in the days, it wasn't really a thing in Poland. So without getting exposed to it, or, you could find resources online, but without really getting exposed to how these people think, who are like working in this field, it was very hard to make any progress or learn anything. So it was quite influential for me and really fun. These were also early days of the subfield of artificial intelligence, where we didn't have some of these successes that you perhaps heard about, like AI for Go or AI for protein folding. So these were early days, and I had a chance to work actually on these problems. I mean, very unsuccessfully, but even working on these problems was a lot of fun, and I don't think it would have been possible without going abroad. So I'm very grateful for having had this opportunity.
So it's a little bit like fake it until you make it.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, exactly. The deep learning was so new that the only way to learn was trying to do something with someone who has invented this 2 years ago and probably failing many, many times. It wasn't really something that you could learn through a structured curriculum or something like that. So it was quite fun.
We'll come back to the fake it until you make it a little later, but now I'd like to ask Eva, how did you end up in Cardiff, and what are the benefits or maybe downfalls of that decision?
Well, I think, to be honest, it's all back to the year of 2004 and Poland joining European Union. And I remember that day really well. I couldn't wait for it because it meant that I could go on an exchange program, Erasmus program, and I spent 6 months working at University of Bremen. Well, back then I was a student. And those 6 months were truly enriching. It really changed my life. And from that moment on, it was really like a snowball effect. One scholarship abroad, second scholarship abroad, PhD at Cardiff University, 2 postdocs, fellowship. It really all started back in 2005. If you asked me a question, how did I end up in Cardiff? Well, after accomplishing 2 Erasmus lifelong learning programs, I was looking for a PhD abroad. I knew that I will not do PhD in Poland. That was out of the question. And I just came across this really interesting description of a PhD project. I've applied and I got it. And funny enough, I wasn't aware of who my supervisor is going to be. Who is that person? I ended up with somebody who was nominated to Nobel Prize 2 times in a row. I wasn't even aware of that back then. So a bit of luck, I guess.
Oh, I'm super envious about that. So I got involved in technology transfer pretty early on and in a very accidental way as well. So I started working during my undergrad studies. I started working for sort of technology transfer office at the Technical University of Łódź. It was early 2000s, so it's very difficult to say that we had like fully grown technology transfer offices. Maybe not in Europe, but in Poland for sure. So I knew very little about what that is and what does it have to do with anything really. So what is technology transfer for you? Because back then I had no idea what that was. Eva, you as a technology transfer officer.
Yes, I mean, I've got very similar memories back at university in Poland. I didn't know what it was. I knew there was an office like that, it did exist, but I haven't come across anybody who had a patent or created a spin out. I thought it was almost impossible. It was like, doing some extraordinary thing. But now, currently being in this job role, I understand that, technology transfer is really needed. What does it mean to me is it is a process that helps to commercialize the research outputs for a greater benefit of the society. And I would like to emphasize how important is the role of intellectual property in this process, because intellectual property gives scientists a very important tool of, using the assets that they having, the IP that they developing for the better benefit of the society, but it also gives them almost a very valuable asset. They can protect the intellectual property in the form of patent, or there are many different forms of protecting IP. So, these two things always come together: technology transfer and IP.
Thanks so much for that. I fully agree with that. And I would like to ask Agata, what's her take on the topic, because you work with many PhD students or young PhDs who want to be entrepreneurs. Are they fully aware of what technology transfer is? What's your impression?
Yes, so we work with current PhD students who are looking to commercialize their research during their PhD, hence de-risking this opportunity for them because they've got their stipends, they're working on that research anyway. Because they come from different universities from across the UK, over 30 universities, the situation at each one looks very different. The process looks different, the IP situation looks different. Also, they have different contracts related to their PhD. So there's always sort of case by case situation there. Whether they're aware of it, I think it's a process of learning when they join the program. At the interview stage before the program starts, we actually ask them, are you aware of where, of what the processes or the tech transfer office in your university? Do you have an IP? Does it belong to you? Do you know where it sits? Are you aware of that? And often they don't. And this is the moment when we say to them, this is probably one of the most important things for you to clarify. Do you have the right to work on this? Do you have the right to commercialize it? Should you be working with someone from the university? Like, they've got their supervisors who are involved in that research and so on. But it's a different situation for each one of them. And we support them on the business side, on helping them to understand, is there a commercial potential? But their role as a founder is to make sure that they are aware of the processes and what steps that they need to take. And it's a learning for them, for all of them.
Sure. Thanks so much. So most of the people that come to you are those with their own ideas, with their own research results that they want to turn into the company, right?
Yes, and they come at different stages. So we do get some students who are in their first, second year of their PhD, third and fourth. It really depends on which stage they're at, because obviously when you're a fourth-year PhD student, have been working on something for 4 years, you have more research to base your startup on. And when you're in the first year, you're probably still a little bit experimenting which direction to go for, what to focus on, what the results are. So yes, that's they do have their own idea, and then it's based on the research. So what's unique, it's that we say it's a deep tech program. The way we understand it is that they're working on unique research at their level, meaning that the tech is built using that research. So it's not like building a website where you can go and do A/B testing and then turn it into a business. No one off the street could just come in and copy that idea, because they have been working in that field for a number of years with a number of experts at the university. So that's the amazing part, that there is that knowledge and expertise within university that they can tap into?
I'm super happy you mentioned the fact that people are coming with the idea. So here I will direct to Stanisław. Was it your idea that was the basis of Molecule One? What was your journey with becoming a CTO?
Sure. So no, it wasn't. It wasn't my idea. And also, it's let me maybe take a spin on this question. I think there is an interesting aspect of the role of technology transfer in my subfield. So I am working in this deep learning, and within the company, we're working on deep learning for organic chemistry. And one interesting aspect there is that, in contrast to, because for example, right, in drug discovery, often the IP is very well defined. It is, for example, a concrete molecule, right? It could be also a process to synthesize something. It could be all sorts of concrete things, and that's the context in which the IP law, right, was created. In computer science, a bit less concrete, so it's not always so clear, or so easy to defend computer science ideas because they are algorithms, right, not concrete things, and this is a bit challenging to defend using typical tools like maybe more trade secrets than patents, for example. So what I'm driving at is I'm not sure. I think it doesn't exactly answer your question, but I think I hope it's a useful spin on this question. The company I'm working at is not based on my ideas, but I have been working on related things during my PhD, and that's how I got involved with the company. To answer it more directly, the reason I got involved with the company, and the way I got involved with the company, was that when it was being founded in 2018, they were looking for someone who had done some work in, AI for drug discovery or organic chemistry, and there just weren't that many people around, especially in Poland, because deep learning was also not a mature field. So it just, I was, not that many people to pick from. So that's how I ended up working with the company, and yeah, very happy that I have stuck around.
I'm actually very, very, very happy to see companies like that growing in Poland, because I myself, I used to work for one of the companies that decided to do AI for drug discovery. And for the last number of years, I saw it becoming from the buzzwords, like turning from the buzzwords into the companies. So I'm super happy it's happening also in Poland, because for a number of years, it was mostly happening abroad. And we have equally great resources here.
Yeah, especially I think as I was saying, there isn't that much. I mean, now there is, but there hasn't been that much deep learning in Poland. But for example, drug discovery, chemistry, like these basic academic fields are, growing well and developing well in Poland. So it's a matter of tapping into this, I think, potential. Yeah.
I totally agree. And did you know much about technology transfer or startup scenery before you actually joined that startup?
No, not at all. The reason I wasn't aware of that is that, and also, I should say that I do not have that much experience with technology transfer per se. Well, mostly because the startup is not based on any my original research, and also actually in computer science it's extremely rare in deep learning to base a startup on things you develop in university. I mean, okay, to backtrack, people do that, but there are so many ideas that are open, and what is defendable is, let's say you develop a system, a lot of code base, a lot of supporting technology, but the core idea that you develop at university is usually hard to defend because there are so many similar papers and so many similar open source code that it's actually quite rare to have a startup based on ideas from university where the core idea is, transferred from university to startup. It does happen, and I'm also not very knowledgeable about the area, but what I can say for sure is very different from typical biotech, for example, where it's actually quite routine to just kickstart or spin off a company that develops, that tries to market a drug that was started at the university. But what I wanted to say again, to answer directly your question, I wasn't aware of it because in Poland it was at the time, and I think to a large extent right now, almost a non-existent topic, especially in computer science. So I think to echo some of what other participants said, no one was actually aware within like my, let's say, social group that technology transfer office exists, or what is its role. And also, I mentioned my parents were scientists. They also were never involved with any technology transfer, and I think almost no one from their peer group was. So it was actually very rare. At least to my kind of people I knew, it was quite rare to commercialize your scientific results. So I think that was the reason I was not aware of it. Right now, I am much more aware of the role and importance of IP, but mostly because of the startup I'm working in. So from a different angle.
Sure. And we're tackling here a very, very interesting topic, which I mean, the differences in between the fields. So as you mentioned, patenting and IP protection and spinning out based on ideas in that sort of field is not so popular. And it's pretty obvious because of the patenting law that does not really provide you many tools to patent the code,
I mean,
and especially models.
Just to clarify a bit, because I don't want to oversimplify. For example, people are patenting, a lot in deep learning, for example. So you can find patents on basically any algorithm someone else uses. So in theory, right now, the situation is that everyone else is infringing on everyone else's patents, but no one is taking this to court. It's a quite interesting situation. So I don't want to say that people are not patenting things, but the situation is quite different because no one is sure how many of these are, defendable. So sorry, I might be getting a bit into nerdy details about IP, but patents are, you file a patent, I guess for some of the audience, you file a patent, but then it's also a question of which one would stand in court, right? And in deep learning, there are so many patents, but it's unclear, which ones of them are actually defendable, because they patent quite abstract ideas. And also I said something about that, that people are not spinning off that much, but I also wanted to say that it's still very, very popular. It's just kind of, I would say, not as frequent, right? Not the key way in which you would start the startup in deep learning. Well, one-off maybe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have one question from the audience that I'll probably start with Eva. The question is, how well is the West prepared to guard IP so that the past mistakes with totalitarian regimes will not be repeated again? So I presume how to protect our knowledge or our inventions not to be stolen. And are we prepared for that? How many different ways are there to actually tackle that problem? And is patenting the only way to go? I also invite everybody to chip in and our audience to ask more questions if you have some.
Yeah, I think if we had lawyers on the call, that would be definitely easier. So let us not forget that, we are armed with something called, intellectual property rights. As Staszek just mentioned, you can, if we see that somebody's infringing our patent, we can take that case to the court. But in reality, nobody has the time and power to do it. So in terms of IP, very often we advise not to protect it by a patent, just to keep it as a trade secret. And, I'll give you, simple example, KFC, nobody knows the recipe for the KFC chicken nuggets, right? It's a mix of, I think, 18 herbs that is, it's kept in the vault in Louisville in US. And when they're making the mix of herbs, they're mixing part of it in one side and part of it in another. So nobody knows what are these 18 or maybe 12, I don't remember, ingredients. So I think there needs to be a balance between that, because patents have the value, of course they have a value, but you know, one size doesn't fit all. There might be technology for which, you know, patent is the best way forward. Others, you know, would be better with just copyright, like for softwares and algorithms, while, you know, trade secrets and know-how are just, you know, these intangible assets that are really, really valuable. To add, exactly, to add to what I say, because I was a bit oversimplifying. For example, in computer science and deep learning, I think trade secrets, as you're saying, are rising in importance because they are quite quite easy to maybe not enforce, but to ensure that you are protecting your IP, because you don't have to go through the whole application process, but you are granted quite a lot of rights.
Agata, now I have a question for you. While selecting your applicants, are you paying attention to their ownership? You mentioned that you make them aware of the ownership of the inventions. And do you see big differences between the fields in terms of IP protection and what people bring to the table with them?
So, well, actually, there's three things we look at when we select applicants for the program. So sort of three broad areas. First of all is looking at the technology. Second one is looking at the innovation of what they're building. And the third one is the potential of the founder. We don't ask specifically about the IP as such. I'll come to that in a second as well. Because we are a program for very early stage founders, most of them, you know, they only have an idea. They don't have business skills. They're often solo founders or only just starting to build a team. Very, very early stages. You know, they wouldn't be accepted in many other accelerator programs that are out there. We are sort of this pre-accelerator level. Where we're happy to accept people who, you know, may become founders, but they may also just get upskilled and be better employees in the future. So we're opening up career options for them. So it's not always, you know, just the startup is the end result and that's the success. In terms of the IP and different fields, I actually, personally, I don't see any difference between the fields. Where I see the difference is the stage of the startup. The more advanced they are, in the sense they have a team, they have advisors that they work with on a regular basis, the more aware they are of that whole area and of the work that needs to be done there. Because I think it's so important, and I suppose we're going to come to that, is that network, having that network of experts who can guide you through that process, because you will never know everything by yourself, and even if you'll try to learn, you may waste a lot of time. So you really need to tap into that expertise that's around you to help guide you on that journey. With the fields, I'm just going to say one other thing is that because we accept people who are working on software, on hardware, or a mix of the two with service, so it's quite, and we're sector agnostic, so we get a huge variety of tech being built by the founders on the program across, you know, many industries. There's energy, fintech, medtech, health tech, edtech, agri-tech, lots of different ones. And I think it also becomes then a little bit more complex, you know, if there's an online platform and there's an actual hardware, where is that hardware being developed, who has been working on it, and so on. So I suppose there's never one answer, you know, that fits all in this case. Keeping it very generic, but that's the reality. It's hard to give advice without knowing all the details of every particular case, and every particular case is very different as well.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I used to work in a funding agency, commercial fund, and it was extremely difficult to choose from all the applicants whom to give the money to start up the business, because there are so many people, so many great ideas, and so many potentials, as you mentioned. So talking about the potential, you said that the IP is not the solemn reason why you choose people. You talk about potential. So what is the determinant of potential great entrepreneur, in your opinion, or your experience?
Yeah, this is a tricky question to answer because, you know, with meeting someone once on the surface, things can look one way. And then 3 months into the startup, you may find out that someone is not really a good founder, and they themselves may find out that, actually, you know what, I'm not really interested in this. I'd rather sit in a lab, and that's absolutely fine. Or I'd rather go and work for someone else, because it takes a lot of persistence, hard work, grit, adaptability, and also I think some level of boldness as well, because, you know, things are not easy. It's not an easy life. You, as I mentioned previously, you know, you have to sort a lot of issues, problems on a daily basis. You have to take some risks, and you have to make a lot of assumptions, go and test things, come back and, you know, fail. So I think that adaptability and being, you know, willing to put the extra hours, extra effort into it, make a great founder. The other thing I would mention is that you really have to be passionate about the idea. Like, if there is no passion, if it doesn't fascinate you, if it's like you're going in there just to do it, then that's not going to work. That's a very short-lived startup or a project, because you do really need that. You know, when we look at very early stage founders, it's almost like they often don't have much business experience. So how do I look at a researcher who has very little business experience to determine that they're going to be a great founder? But over the years, and we have worked with 250 PhD teams to date. This current cohort has 95 teams, so it's a very busy year for us. But you can see, you know, like, you have to learn to read between the lines, and this is not a very scientific method I'm describing, because it often it's a combination of things that have to come together. But you know, someone doesn't have a business experience, but what you look at is like, what else have they done outside of their research? Have they participated in other programs, done hackathons, done internships? Have they been leaders in local community or leaders in whatever kind of association? Have they shown some initiatives? Do they go beyond a little bit what, you know, like the research is for them? You have to also look at, you know, how what research they're working on, how much passion there is around that research and that field in particular. And put all these things together along with many other criteria, obviously, and see whether there is a potential. And I think part of what we do is giving people a chance to test themselves, to see whether, you know, do I really want to do it? Because it's not easy, you know. If you're in your PhD, you have certain things you need to do on a weekly, monthly basis, and then building a startup alongside, it's not an easy thing to do. But at the same time, you're giving yourself the best chance to see if there's, rather than putting your thesis on a shelf at the university, can it actually solve one of the biggest problems in the world, whether it's health or energy? And it actually, that's so important to us, that we're giving people a chance. So to summarize, I think that there are different, there isn't a recipe for a successful founder. And I think for many individuals, it takes a while for them to realize whether this is the path they want to be on or not. Yeah. I'm sure that Staszek and Eva can give other examples, as they've themselves have experienced a lot in that field. And there isn't one founder that I could just give, you know, 10 bullet points and say this person has to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on to make sure that they're going to be a successful one in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was about to ask Eva, what's her impression when she meets such a young person who wants to do something with his or her idea? Do you know right away whether or not this person was going to be successful?
Maybe I will just clarify. Our technology transfer office deals with the commercialization of research that is developed by employees of university. And according to the law, PhD students own any intellectual property that they create, which means that we are not helping them. For that, they are separated part of that deals with it called student enterprise, but they are not really providing, full package of support as we do for employees of Cardiff University. So that's a difference. That's a big difference. Very often I get a request from students, but straight away I'm not allowed to give them advices. I can listen to them and we can have conversation, and I would be wearing my, whether it's Polonium Foundation or my just me, Eva hat, but I cannot act as a technology transfer university representing Cardiff University. So that's the difference. But you are right. Very often when I'm meeting with the researchers, with academics, and they start telling me about their ideas, I get the feeling where this is going. And, a lot of this discussion has been around setting up a startup. And what I would like to emphasize here is that, startup is not the only option. Many academics just don't have that entrepreneurial mindset. So at the very early stage of engaging with them, we will be able to spot that they will never become CEOs. They just don't have that mindset, and they might spend hours, learning it, but it's not them. They were born scientists, hardcore scientists who wanted to do research. Maybe they've had, it's a really, buzzy word, startups, innovation, it's coming. We are being bombarded by it. But we need to realize that not everybody was born entrepreneur, and maybe it's just not who you want to be. So I would like to, speak a bit more about, the option of licensing. There's always this option of licensing the technology to the industry or another partner who will just take it further. Maybe, the academic would like to stay at university. He wants to pursue his academic career. He achieved something great. He developed some great technology, and it's just now, to license it to somebody else who will take it to the next level. So, yeah.
So following up on this one, we have a question in our chat that says, how much IP innovation can take place at the university compared to the industries already engaged in this field we're talking about? What are the trends? Anyone who wants to take this question? What do you think?
I'm happy to start. I think there is really more and more happening around it. I'm just, speaking as a technology transfer officer at Cardiff University. We've seen more and more funding, even from local government, from Welsh government, just to support the innovation. We launched a call called Innovation for All, where this funding is available to everyone up to £25,000 just to pursue this idea, pursue the project on a translational research pathway. So we are seeing, more funding coming to universities to bring to carry on with the commercialization and protection of IP. Of course, I think we will always be in the worst position than industry, because they know exactly what is needed. But I think we getting there. That's what I can say from TTO position based in the UK.
So anyone else wants to add anything to that opinion? Okay, so I'll reverse my previous question. So what are the typical weak sides of the entrepreneurs to be? And is it true what Americans say, fake it until you make it? Can we do something with the shortcomings to turn them into our advantages? What do you think?
Maybe one thought on fake it until you make it. I think that what you mentioned, I think Agata, right? That perseverance is one of the top aspects, and when you start a company, you will surely end with something different than what you started with. And often the final idea will be completely different than the initial one, which also actually is quite interesting for the discussion on IP. But not thinking about this specifically, but more broadly, I think that one of the most important things is perseverance. I think it takes like 5 years at least to develop something to something actually useful, and it's just a long time. So I think founders should understand and keep in mind that the journey they're embarking on is not something for 2 years, but it will take 5 years, and it will probably, usually they are quite challenging and miserable years, to be honest. I'm not a founder, but I also worked in early stage parts of company. And I think that's one thing to keep in mind.
Can I add to that, Karolina? Because this is really
sure,
interesting.
Of course. Yeah.
Staszek, I think you have worked with clearly some miserable founders, but I think 95% of them in the early stage are, because people don't know what they're getting themselves into. But talking about what people don't know probably at the start, and I'll focus just on based on the experience I have with scientists and PhD researchers. I think there are three main areas that we have found challenging from the mindset perspective. First of them is financial aspects. That in the end, if you're trying to turn it into a business, you need to make money, because that's a business. If it's not making money, then it's a very expensive hobby or something else, or it's a side project, right? And changing that mindset, as a researchers, people often have only a grant given, and there's a limited amount, right? So it's trying to teach them not to teach them, but get them to that point when they realize, like, I may need more money that looks available to me, and that money is available out there. So what are my milestones? How much money do I need, and where I can potentially get it from? Rather than thinking, oh, I have a 10K grant and that's all I can work with. So that's the first part. The second part we have found is people. So the fact that you'll have to build a team. Sooner or later, you can't do everything by yourself. And it's very important for you to realize that what skill set do you have, and can you do some things by yourself, or does it make sense for you to learn to code I don't know, Python, let's come up with this, for a 2-month period, rather than find someone who can do it for you tomorrow, and it's way more experience, right? Because what you have is time. Time is your currency, really, right? So you don't have money. So you have to be smart about that. And part of the team is also what Eva mentioned, right? Not everyone needs to be a CEO. Maybe your role in the startup, you might be the chief scientific officer or CTO, right? You don't necessarily have to be the CEO who goes out and finds business, to simplify the definition of a CEO. So the team, again, to get a team, you need probably money, because you will be working on a long-term period. And what Staszek mentioned, especially in deep tech, this is not a 1-2 years, right? This is a long-term, because by the time you're actually ready to release it to the market, the whole process that happens before that, it's not over a short term. And the third one, from my perspective, is customers, and not being open to speaking to people and failing and understanding what the problem is, rather than just building the tech. And having that, I suppose it's willingness to humility, and be sort of exposing yourself to customers, to potential customers, to ask them questions, something you may feel very uncomfortable with if you sit in a lab most of your day. But looking at it, this is an experiment. I need to talk to customers to get data. So based on that data, I can iterate and then go back. And I think people often feel that they can do everything with surveys or just market research, and it's never enough. And this is one of the things we teach on the program as well. Sorry, I have to not teach, but we try to send that message to them constantly throughout the program, that you need to speak to potential customers and not to be afraid for whatever prototype you build in the early stage, for that not to be perfect. Because when you're a researcher and you release a paper, whatever, it has to be perfect, right? It goes through the reviews, whatever it is. Like, you never release something that's far from perfect. Where in the startup world, you need to be prepared to send something ugly in the world, and get feedback on it and then make it better. And I think these are the three main areas when it comes to mindset, right? The finance, the team building, and the customer. Based on what I have seen at Conception X and many other founders I have worked with, because the customer mindset, I think, applies to everyone, whether you're a scientist or not. If you're not thinking about customers, you're building a very expensive hobby.
Or your company is pretty much that at that point.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree with what you just said. From my experience working at a drug discovery / bioinformatics company, working in healthcare sector, I had that experience that people, especially scientists, they become directors, they become team leaders, they become R&D directors, and they think their solemn role is to stay in the office, in the lab, in front of the computer, and do the science the best they can. But it's actually not true, because salespeople, business developers, they need help. They need their help to convey the message, to explain the tools to the external world and the customers. So the scientists in these roles, they have to learn how to communicate. They have to learn how to talk to people. And as you said, this is not always the most comfortable role that we may put ourselves into. I have one more quite controversial question, I would say. Do you see any differences between female and male founders or founders to be? Because looking at the job applications, women usually want to be like perfectly fulfilling the application in at least 80–90%. How does it look like in terms of future entrepreneurs? Do you have any experiences with that?
Yeah, I can try and answer some of it, and this is solely based because we do get a lot of female founders joining Conception X program. I think because we de-risk this opportunity, and I have previously worked on the Female Founders Accelerator here in London, and I've set up a female founders community in Lisbon. So I had a daily connections to female founders and seeing, you know, how they operate. There are differences and there aren't. I think the potential is the same. I think the main limitations I have seen are the limitation of time. If women have families, households to take care of, elderly to take care of, that all, it takes away time, right? If you don't have time, it's just physically impossible, or less is possible. The second one is access to funding. And by access to funding, I mean connections, because funding comes through connections. So you need to build your network. And I think there is some limitations in there in terms of, not limitations, I suppose that's the wrong word, but how much the connections are available through people you know. So if you know, if you don't know enough people, then you know it might be harder for you to get to those funding sources. Hence, for example, Female Founders Accelerator was helping women to connect to investors because they just didn't have those connections. And the third one I have seen over the years, it's I suppose this comes across not just in the startup world but anywhere. It's just the confidence level, and that applies also in the imposter syndrome. That applies to everyone, but I have seen it in some very successful female founders that the confidence was sometimes just not there, and I think that all put together is what makes the difference, right? Because if you look at each one of those elements separately, it may not be so huge, but once you put them together. But with that said, I also think that women are, and there's a research out there, a little bit more risk averse, which can be a good and a bad thing. So you'll see, and I've read recently as well somewhere, you know, if you're more risk averse, then you're obviously no startup world is about risking, right? You have to be prepared to do it. At the same time, some of the startups, and I can't quote the report I read, it was a little while ago, some of the startup founders where there was at least one female founder were doing really well because they didn't take some unnecessary risks. So there's a combination of that as well. That's my take on this, having worked with actually quite a few female founders to date. But I'll add Ewa and Staszek perhaps add their thoughts.
No, fully agree. Especially these societal aspects are interesting, where women might need more security, right? Because on other axes, for example, risk aversion, I think you can find the whole spectrum, also men, but the societal aspects are actually very interesting, and they do probably affect female founders. Personally, I haven't worked with female founders, so I don't have much specific experience.
Yes, I'm technology transfer officer facing College of Physical Science and Engineering. So School of Computer Sciences, School of Engineering, Physics and Astronomy, Chemistry and Mathematics. So you can imagine that this is a male-dominated area. And I must say, even looking back, my initial engagement with academics, where they just, calling and saying, oh, I would like to have a meeting with you. Let's talk about my disclosure. Out of maybe 20 disclosures that I handled last year, only one came from women. Yeah. So it's just a problem of, academia. That's where I, see the issue.
Yeah. And really, your point, Agata, about diversity resonated with me. I think that's, at least from my experience working with women, perhaps the most, I guess, one of the biggest, let's say, drawbacks of the situation is that we are really missing, diverse perspectives on many problems. And teams should be built for diversity, both on the founder level, but also, just companies. So that's a pity that this is the situation.
Thank you for that. I think it's an extremely important point. And as Agata mentioned already, the statistics say that if the composition of the management board or the team are mixed, the results oftentimes are much better than in one or another gender prevalence. We also have one more question connected to money on our chat. It says, what kind and size of financial support could give Polish innovators to get to the level of the Indian sandboxes developed by MIT Innovator Chair? I don't think we have the knowledge here about the funding opportunities on the Polish market, but maybe we could look at the more global level. Do you have any information on that? Agata, maybe you could tell us what level of support in general, in terms of training, finances, could your company provide? How does it look like?
Yeah, I think in terms of a financial support, I think it depends really. It depends what you're willing to do, because there are obviously grants out there in the world that you can apply to. Grants often mean, there's some criteria you have to fulfill, and in exchange for that, there might be KPIs for you to follow and submit reports and so on. And then the other thing is you can also get capital, right? But that requires you to give away often the equity, right? So are you willing to apply for, grants or get money from investors? I think it depends. It's on an individual cases. If we were to talk about Polish innovators, I don't have enough knowledge to share that specifically. But any sort of financial support, it's you have to think about, why do I need money? What do I need money for? And then what am I willing to compromise to get that money? One of the biggest things, as I mentioned, about the financial mindset is actually realizing how much money do you actually need. And I think at universities, you often have, if I mentioned, you have the enterprise and innovation departments, right, that run different types of workshops and have the support available of coaches and business experts who can help you work out what it is you need and where to get it from. And certainly there's support for grant funding and writing grant proposals and so on. What we have seen on the program, that everyone who went through the program, the PhD students are getting much better at getting their grants, receiving grants, simply because they get better at writing their business case and proving that there is a need for money to support their research. which is exciting to see.
I would like to officially put the last call for questions because we're very fast approaching the end of our conversation. And in the meantime, I would like to ask you all, what would be the piece of advice that you could give to the people, the scientists who would like to become entrepreneurs, and in either form, either in form of licensing their ideas or technologies, or becoming a startuppers? And maybe who wants to start? Okay, go ahead.
Advice that, this is how I always start conversation with my academics who wants to commercialize their research. I ask a question: do you know if there is a market for it? So back to what Agata said, if there is no market for your invention, for your idea, don't bother. Nobody will buy it. And I will just give you an example of a patent application, which you will remember till the end of your life. A person protected an idea for spider ladder for rescuing spiders who will be trapped in the bath. Why would you do it? Who'd buy it? What's the point? The patent was even granted, and somebody wanted to build a company based on that. Company failed, patent lapsed, was withdrawn at the end. So think about the market.
So I presume it's a true story. It's not like a made-up story for this occasion.
No, it's not. I'm happy to provide you with the patent application number if you want to, look up. There is even drawing attached to that patent application. You can then see the spider ladder. Yeah. So make sure there is a market for the technology you want to commercialize or for your idea. Yeah,
we got a comment that somebody would definitely buy the ladder and for spiders. Stanisław, what's your piece of advice?
Maybe a bit not thinking about what someone has invented at university, but just thinking about what it means and what it is to be a scientist at a startup, especially a startup at the early stage. So I guess I would encourage someone to take such a journey, or at least try it. I think it's quite unique. So the advice would be to be courageous about this and try it. There are different frameworks in which you can think about what it is to be, what's the role of a scientist at a startup. But one framework that I like to think, in terms of which I like to think about, is that one feature or one trait of a good scientist is that he has a very long-term vision for what he wants to achieve. And it's actually one of the things I have kind of maybe not learned, but witnessed abroad, that it was much more common there abroad to have very long-term vision in which someone was very passionate about, but also be able to transfer this very long-term vision into very concrete short-term, let's say, papers, grants, and things like that. So you have to, as a scientist, you have to persevere, or the best scientists, I think, are the ones who stayed within similar, let's say, path for like 15 years, maybe 10 years, and were very lucky about picking the path, because you cannot know. So, the scientists that end up getting Nobel Prizes are very often ones that were very lucky, of course, genius, but also lucky. And I think there is a parallel to the startup world, where you need to have a vision and perseverance. We said that it is very important. And you also need to transform this vision into this very short-term goals, as Agata was saying, for example, getting customers and talking to the market. So I think you can find a lot of parallels between these two worlds, and I think it is worth trying, because some other aspects of being in the industry you might find it interesting. So I guess it's being courageous, and also I think it's worth exploring.
Agata, and how about yourself?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Ewa and Staszek mentioned. My advice would be two pieces of advice. First of all, find people who are like you, who have already done it and work in a startup and have commercialized similar type of technology or science, whatever research you're working on. to get their input on the journey, what that journey may include, and also to tap into the knowledge that they already have, because it's invaluable. So experts in the field who have done it. And my second part would be, you need to be prepared to talk to people at some point, whether you like it or not. So ask yourself this question, can you be courageous enough to go out and talk to people about the solution? Because in the end, often what researchers are building are solutions that are actually helping people. So you need to be prepared to talk to people. So to me, it's the dirty word networking, but really what it is connecting to the right people, because you never know, further down the line, those connections may materialize, and you may actually need those people you have met 2 or 3 years ago. And they will be the ones who will be your supporters that connect you to investors, perhaps. So that's the important part.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning networking. As we probably all know here, it's extremely important. And thus, I would like to invite you once more to join Polonium Network, at least follow Polonium Network and Plugin Foundation, where you can actually build your network. You can connect to people. You can connect to like-minded people that may be of some use, or you might be of use for them in the future. I still cannot stop thinking about what Agata wrote in her bio, that she created a startup and she failed. So what were the lessons you've learned from that experience? Was it worth it? Was it not worth it? What do you think?
Oh, it was worth it, but it could have cost me less money and less time. What I've learned and what I teach our PhD students is that my startup, my company failed because I didn't talk to customers. I did surveys, I did research, market research, but I didn't talk to people. And that's the first thing I've learned. And I could have validated my idea in over a four-week period, probably. And what happened after, I ended up actually talking to customers and doing customer discovery to understand whether my next idea actually was going to work. So lessons learned, talk to people.
Thank you very much. And it again proves what we've already said today. And we cannot stress that enough, that talking to people, networking, validating your ideas as soon as possible. It doesn't matter, it's not perfect. But if you want to go forward with your idea, go forward with your invention, make sure there's somebody interested in it, and make sure you can actually make money in it, because otherwise you're going to be doomed to fail. So I would like to thank you very much for today's conversation and participation in this very interesting conversation. I'm sure that there are many more hours we could talk about that. So thanks again for joining us. Thank you to all the participants who decided to listen to our conversation and participate in it.